In March of 2025, I heard Dr. Ben Bickman talk about insulin resistance, and something cracked open. I started asking a question I'd been trained not to ask. What if everything I know about nutrition is wrong? Hello. Welcome to the How to Take Care of Yourself podcast. I'm Veronica Wolff-Casey, and I am so glad you're here. I want to start by telling you something that I don't say enough. For years, I was the person people came to when their body stopped working. Ayurvedic practitioner, yoga teacher, someone who had spent decades studying how the body heals. I was teaching in one of the most respected Ayurvedic programs in the country, working alongside people at the very top of this field. And my own body was not working. Had a little sugar belly. I couldn't shift no matter what I did. My digestion had basically stopped. I hadn't pooped in like months and months, like a year and a half. I was exhausted in a way that didn't match my effort. And underneath all of that, I was depressed and anxious in a way that I'd been managing my whole life, but never fully resolved. I was doing everything right on paper, right? Everything right by the book, by the classical texts that are behind me, right? I was doing every herb, every protocol, every recommendation, and nothing was moving. Nothing was working. In March of 2025, I heard Dr. Ben Bickman talk about insulin resistance, and something cracked open. I started asking a question I'd been trained not to ask. What if everything I know about nutrition is wrong? What if it's not wrong for everyone, but it's wrong for me and maybe for a lot of the people I'm trying to help? So I changed how I was eating. The physical stuff started shifting within weeks, and then something I didn't expect happened. The depression and anxiety I'd been managing since childhood, since I was 6 years old, probably before that, but they put me in therapy when I was 6. But it started lifting. That depression and anxiety started to disappear, and within a month, they were gone. Not managed, actually gone. I'm still a little stunned by this, honestly, but it's why I'm here. So I want to talk about what was actually happening in my body and probably what's happening in yours, because what I found changes everything about how we approach this. Tell me if this is you. You wake up tired even after 8 hours of sleep, not groggy, tired, like you've never actually rested. It's that tiredness where you wake up and you're already fantasizing about getting back into bed. And by mid-morning, you're already hunting for something sweet, something crunchy, something to like wake your brain up. You're not even hungry exactly. It's more like a craving that feels like a demand, right? Like if you don't do the thing, you're not going to succeed in whatever else is in front of you during your day. And then around mid-afternoon, you hit a wall. It's like, I think of the cartoon of when like someone throws a cartoon character against the wall and they just slide down. It's that kind of thing. They hit the wall and they slide down. And that's what I mean by that mid-afternoon, you hit a wall. And then so you get some coffee or you get some chocolate or you get a cookie, and it helps for about 45 minutes. And then you're back under the fog. It's possible that you've had belly fat that appeared around 40 and has not moved despite everything you've done, everything, right? You've got that little belly, that little gut, and you're like, why? I do crunches until I want to throw up and I still have this belly fat, and I should not still have this belly fat. It's very frustrating. And I know I've been there. You might also be moody and short-tempered in ways that don't match who you know yourself to be, and you snap at people who you love and then feel terrible about it. You've tried things, many things, and they've worked for a little bit, or maybe they haven't worked at all, and maybe it was medication where you felt like, oh, okay, the depression and anxiety, I'll take these medications my doctors prescribe, but then you don't feel anything. You don't even feel better. You just feel like bland, or maybe you've tried different diets. Maybe you did Whole30 or Hard 90 or what are the other ones? South Beach diet or whatever, like any diet. Maybe you went vegan. Maybe you did whatever you were told to do, right? Because we do that. We try to find solutions. We're not stupid. We're trying to figure out how to fix it. But here's what I want you to hear. None of that is a character flaw. None of those symptoms are a character flaw. None of the failure of any of that is a character flaw. It's not laziness. It's not you being bad at this. What it is, it's a body running on a broken signal. And that signal has a name. Let's talk about insulin real quick, because I don't want you to get bogged down. But when we eat, particularly when we eat carbohydrates and sugar, our blood glucose rises and insulin has to come manage it. So your pancreas is the organ that releases insulin. And if you're like, I didn't even know I had a pancreas, don't worry about it. But the pancreas is the organ that releases insulin. Insulin is actually a hormone, and its job is to shuttle glucose into the cells for energy. And you've got all sorts of things in your body that need glucose for energy, your brain, your muscles, all sorts of stuff. When we spike insulin repeatedly over years, cells start to stop responding as well. It's like, maybe you've had this experience. I'm going to talk about it with my cats, but you might have had an experience of like this with your children, where I have one cat who she really likes my attention and she really likes to play, and she's very vocal about it. Her name is Naja, the Nugget. She's super sweet. But if I'm working and she comes in, first meow, I'll probably be like, hey, sweetie, and I'll say hi. But then 5 minutes in and she's still yelling at me, meow, meow, meow. I just stop listening, right? And that's the same as your cells with insulin. They stop responding as well. It's just like your kid yelling at you. And after a while, you're just, unless you're on fire, right? Unless you're on fire, I'm not listening. So what happens to the cat, your kids, to the pancreas starts to pump out more insulin to compensate, just like your cat or your kid will get louder and louder so that you will listen to them. In this instance, the pancreas is pumping out more insulin to compensate for the lack of response in the cellular level. Chronically elevated insulin locks fat in place. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. So when it's elevated all the time, the fat gets locked in place because your body physically cannot burn stored fat when insulin is high. It's not a choice. It's actually biochemistry. That's why you can't argue with this particular thing, because it's very much a biochemical reaction. It's what happens in the body. You can't will your way out of it. You can't change your body chemistry. It doesn't matter what you do, because no matter what you do, that elevated insulin is locking that fat in place, and you cannot burn it when insulin is high. This is why the diets didn't work. This is why the exercise didn't work the way it should have. You've been fighting your own insulin. And that's why this whole calories in, calories out thing doesn't make a lot of sense when we look at the biochemistry. Yes, there's the law of thermodynamics. I completely understand that. But when we're looking at the biochemistry of insulin and fat burning versus storage, it just is what it is. You can't diet and exercise your way out of it if you're eating the wrong foods. And so here's the after 40 piece. And I know not all of you are older than 40 years old, but if you are, this will probably feel pretty familiar, because especially women, but men too run into this. So after we hit 40 or around there, estrogen starts to decline, and that declining estrogen directly impacts insulin sensitivity. And nobody really talks about this, right? Like when you go to the doctor does not tell you this. The other thing is that cortisol raises blood sugar, which also raises insulin. And most people over 40 are running chronically elevated cortisol because life is genuinely stressful, right? Being an adult is crazy, especially after 40. For most of us, we're trying to take on things. We're trying to buy a house, have a family, work our jobs, get ahead in life, whatever it is. It's very stressful. And then there's the sleep disruption part. Most people I talk to, and maybe there's a lot of good sleepers out there, but they're not coming to talk to me. Most of the people I'm talking to are not sleeping well. They're either having a hard time falling asleep because they're so stressed out, their brain's not letting them go to sleep, or they're waking up in the middle of the night around 3 o'clock or so, maybe 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, which is a cortisol spike, which means their cortisol is high. But now that cortisol, which is already raising their insulin, is leading to sleep disruption, which raises their insulin more. Yikes. These things that happen naturally as we age are metabolically destabilizing. And nobody warned us. I didn't learn about this. I didn't even learn about this in Ayurveda school. Like, I only learned about this after I started really pulling back the curtain on metabolic health. Because before this, I was, well, let's be honest, when I started going through menopause and I actually started to get symptoms of hot flashes and irritability and not sleeping, I tried to find menopause in the Ayurvedic texts, and it's not in there because it's not considered a pathology, because it's not supposed to be a pathology. And maybe back in the day it wasn't, but boy, is it now. Here's the deal though. Even though you didn't learn about this and we didn't get taught this in school, you didn't fail your metabolism. Your metabolism was set up to struggle, and nobody gave you the right map. And the things that we knew from back in the day no longer apply because the food that we have now is not the same food. We're not eating the way we were ancestrally. We just aren't. The fruit and the vegetables that we're eating now are not the same fruit and vegetables from 100 years ago. Gosh, they're not even the same as 50 years ago. There's all sorts of things that have happened. Everything has been genetically engineered, or bread doesn't even have to be genetically engineered. They just breed the food this way, right? Oh, sweet apples sell more. Let's make the apples more sweet. Okay, so why does the mainstream approach make things worse? Well, calorie restriction raises cortisol. And if we think about what we learned just a minute ago, raised cortisol, high levels of cortisol, leads to high levels of insulin. Insulin's too much. It's causing insulin sensitivity to go down because the body's like, you're yelling too much. I'm sick of listening to you. So the body's like, well, then I'll yell more. It's this whole, it's a catch-22. And then there chronic cardio that people are doing, because what are you told? You're told to eat less and move more. So calorie restriction, which raises cortisol, and then move more. So if you're doing chronic cardio, that also raises cortisol. So both of those things raise insulin. Yikes. So before you've even started, you're screwed, right? And you're told this all the time. You've probably been to the doctor if you've ever been overweight. And I gained like something, I know it's not going to sound like a lot to some of you, but I gained like 20, 25 pounds after we got married. And I remember going to the doctor and being like, oh, I used to be 140 and now I'm like 165. That's very strange to me. I don't know what happened. And we talked it through and she's like, oh, I just think you need to move more and maybe eat a little less. She literally said this to me, and I had a pretty knowledgeable doctor. I had shopped around to find one that I trusted. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess you're right. And so I tried those things, which did not work. Spoiler alert. And so what are you told to eat when you're told to eat less? You're told to eat low fat, lots of healthy grains, right? Fruits and vegetables. But low fat, high grain diets spike blood sugar repeatedly throughout the day. So you've got that calorie restriction. You got, if you're doing exercise and you're doing chronic cardio, I see all these people running on the treadmills, riding their bikes, doing the thing, getting your sweat on. All of that's raising cortisol. And then you're eating this diet that's raising insulin. And so you're just getting constant insulin noise over and over and over and over again. And the conventional wellness playbook was designed without any of this in mind, which is why you can do everything the mainstream advice tells you to do and make your insulin resistance measurably worse by leaps and bounds. This is not a personal failure. It's a design flaw in the advice. The reason why I keep saying you're not failing, because a lot of the people I work with come to me and say, I feel like a failure because I did the things. And you might even gone to your doctor's office and have them look at you. It's kind of like when you go to the dentist. You can be the best flosser in the world. They ask you if you flossed. They're like, do you ever floss? And it's like, yeah, I floss every day. And they just give you that look. The doctor does the same thing when you tell them like, no, I'm dieting and moving. And they just give you that knowing look like, yeah, sure you are, right? Like they don't believe you. But that's not your fault. The advice is flawed. The advice is so flawed. Don't even get me started on that. Now, my story had kind of an unexpected consequence. And I had heard something about it, and I was a little curious what would happen as far as the mental health aspect. And I want to be really careful how I talk about it because it's not a simple story. But when my metabolic picture changed, my mood changed. And that anxiety and depression, like I had just chronic anxiety and free floating depression all the time. And it was terrible because I didn't have any reason for it. We live in Maine. I have an amazing husband. I've got 2 beautiful cats. I've got, the cutest little house that could be. I live in a great community. Like my parents are still alive. Like there's nothing wrong. Right. But my mood changed when my metabolic picture changed. The depression and anxiety went away. And I had tried other interventions. Like I had been on medication. I had tried different types of therapy. I had tried family constellations. I had tried, oh gosh, what was it? Dialectical therapy? I don't remember. But like I tried so many different things because I'm a solutions person. You bring me a problem, I fix it. That's what I do. That's how I'm programmed. That's my whole Asperger's thing in a nutshell. I like to find solutions. And so I'm not telling you that food is a cure for mental illness, but what I'm telling you is that for me and for many of the people I work with, metabolic dysfunction is a significant driver of psychiatric symptoms that nobody has ever connected to the physical picture, except people are doing that now. So Dr. Georgia Ede is doing fabulous work with this. If you find her book called Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind, that's excellent. And then Dr. Chris Palmer, and I can't remember the name of his book right now, but he is amazing. And both of these, Dr. George Ede and Dr. Chris Palmer, both have interviews all over YouTube. So I will link to some of those below, and I'll link to their books too. We're going to talk more about this in future episodes because each of these topics deserves its own episode. But I really wanted to just touch on that, and just so you don't have to wait for those episodes to come out, just know that Dr. Georgia Ede's book and Dr. Chris Palmer's book will help you. And even you could just listen to the interviews that I post below, and you'll get a lot out of it. But just know that there is hope for this. There's hope for everything. Let's layer on the Ayurvedic piece, because I have not thrown away Ayurveda, and I've written about this extensively, and I've done podcasts about this already where I talk about how I'm keeping the Ayurveda that makes sense in the picture of what we're trying to do here. Because I'm not just another low carb person. I'm not just another carnivore influencer. I don't know why I'm using that weird voice, but you know what I mean? I'm not just another one of those carnivore bros or whatever. But my background adds something that metabolic science alone doesn't fully account for. And that's there's no one size fits all. Because Ayurveda has been observing constitutional patterns for thousands and thousands of years. And we can keep that with our knowledge of what's going on. There are some thoughts that insulin resistance maps closely over to what Ayurveda calls kapha imbalance, but I don't think that's the whole picture. I think there's more to it, because I think there's a vata imbalance there too, as well as a pitta imbalance. I think when we're seeing all of these clusters of symptoms together, that we're really getting that kind of full spectrum Ayurvedic picture, right? Because it's like everything's being made to be pushed out of alignment with what your body needs. And that can be really hard. And so I still think about warm cooked foods. I still think about eating the same time every day if you can, trying to maintain a good digestive fire. But the truth is what I'm seeing with clients that I'm working with this particular approach is that they are finding that they have to rework their entire relationship with food and hunger and the ebbs and flows, because many of them have been chronic undereaters. And unfortunately, a lot of what I learned was you eat this small amount, your stomach's only this big, and yada, yada, yada. And unfortunately, that can cause you to stay in chronic malnourishment over time. And so part of what happens when we start actually removing carbohydrates and focusing on protein and fat is that we're actually refueling the body, sometimes for the first time in years and decades. But we have to respect the digestive fire, and so sometimes we have to build that up. I've had to really figure out over the last year what holds up and what doesn't. And I'm still in that process. I'm going to be honest. I'm still figuring out what pieces work and what pieces don't. And that's important to know, because there's there's certain truths that hold for both frameworks. And I'm building something that is based on all of that, because what I really want to do is find the solutions that work for the body that you're living in right now. That's what I had to do for myself. That's the integration the 1% metabolic reset method is built on. And if you're not sure what that is, don't worry about it. I'm going to explain it a little bit. Part of what I've been doing over the last year is trying to codify what I know from Ayurveda and from the metabolic science. And it's just been a process of learning what's happening in my own body, my husband's body, my client's body, and seeing what really works. And I'm not going to lie, part of it has to do with food addiction, because if you've ever talked about carbs with someone, and maybe you are this person, you start talking about carbohydrate restriction, and there's this sheer panic that comes over people, right? I don't know how many times I've told people how I eat, and I actually am a pretty strict carnivore at this point, only because that's what worked for me. I don't expect my clients or my people to do this. That's just where I've ended up for now, and that might change. It definitely changed over the course of the last year. I started out as low carb, then I went ketovore, which means a little more low carb, and then I went completely carnivore. And that's just what happened. I will say this again for the people in the back. I do not expect everyone to do that, because I don't know that everybody has to. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to keep sugar on the table, because the other thing I'm talking about here is that addiction piece is huge for people, and sugar is more addictive than cocaine. I know you just part of your brain. No, it's not. How is that possible? I'm not a drug addict. No, you're not, but you are if you're addicted to sugar in a way. Hits the same dopamine receptors, and they've done studies. You can look it up. There's studies with rats where they found that the rats would go for the sugar over the cocaine. It's just food for thought, something to think about. So before I tell you what's coming next, I want to tell you why I named my methodology what I named it. It's the 1% metabolic reset method. I started reading James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And if you have not read that book, whoo, girl, boy, whoever you are, go read that book. It's amazing. You don't want to read it, listen to it on Audible. You don't want to do that, just go listen to any podcast with James Clear. You'll get the gist. But the book is amazing. And even if you don't like reading, it's an excellent read. His book showed us something that changes everything about how we approach behavior change. And the first thing is that we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. So we have to build good systems in place before we can move forward with anything. And the other is that a 1% improvement compounded daily produces extraordinary results over time. The math is staggering. It's something like, if you get 1% better every day for a year, you're like 37.9 times better than you were, something ridiculous. It's beautiful. More importantly, a 1% shift is sustainable in a way that a complete overhaul never can be. You ever try to change your life overnight? I've done this so many times. I'm embarrassed to admit it. I would feel badly about myself, either dietarily or some of you know, I had a history with alcohol and smoking and just being a regular, like I was a party girl. I was definitely the girl that your parents warned you about when you went out. Like they were like, don't hang out with that Veronica girl. She'll lead you down a bad path. And I kind of was. I mean, I was a good person, but I was crazy. I was a real wild child, of course. I had undiagnosed Asperger's. I had anxiety and depression through the roof. And I found that alcohol, smoking, drugs, whatever, they medicated me. It felt better. Could go to a nightclub, dance my cares away, but then I would feel terrible the next day. And I was eating sugar like it was, I mean, I love sugar. I did. I ate tons of sugar. I loved bread, everything. Ate it all the time. So I was addicted to sugar. I was drinking. I was smoking. And so I would feel bad after a couple of weeks of that. I would decide I'm going to change my life. I'd write a to-do list and I'd put out all the points of how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I even remember I would find characters in movies or books that I really admired. I'm like, they look like they've got their life together. And at the top of the to-do list, I'd put, be more like Nora or whoever, right? Like, be this person, as if somehow writing it down was going to make me that person. But I would do that and I'd be like, all right, everything changes. Everything changes tomorrow. And I clean my room and I get rid of everything. And I'd be like, I'm turning over a new leaf. And that would last for a day and a half, maybe longer. Maybe I made it a week sometimes. I have no idea. But it never stuck. Never stuck. Never stuck. That's why I'm not interested in dramatic overhauls, because it doesn't work. The rebellion that follows those extreme restrictions, it feels like a moral failing, but it's not. It's actually physiological. Your nervous system and your hunger hormones are working exactly as designed. The problem is the approach, not you. You rebound. You have to do things slowly. I like to tell my students and my clients, nothing happens in nature suddenly that's not catastrophic. Everything happens gradually. And I'm just looking out the window here at my beautiful backyard in Maine. And I'm seeing like the grass just doesn't all of a sudden spring up from the ground here in spring. It takes its time. It comes up little by little. The trees just don't all of a sudden go sprung with their leaves. It takes some time. It's little by little. Because if it all happened overnight, there would be this huge disruption of the system. Nothing's ready for that. So it has to be slowly. It has to move step by step. And I'm not interested in dramatic overhauls anymore at all. I'm interested in small, specific, metabolically intelligent shifts that your nervous system can absorb and your body can sustain. These are shifts that compound. And that's why it's called the 1% metabolic reset method. Not because the results are small, but rather because the steps are. And it's not called the 1% because we're better than anyone else, right? But we're called the 1% because we're doing the work. And actually, I have to say, it's pretty rare to get someone who really wants to dig down and do the work. And that's who I'm looking for. I'm looking for people that really want to do that. All right. Next week, I'm going to start to get very specific. We're going to talk about the dietary shifts that actually move the needle on insulin resistance and why some of what you've tried before was working directly against your own metabolism. If you're ready to go deeper, you want to work with me, I've got a couple ways. So you could either book a one-on-one with me, which I would love to see you one-on-one, where it's just me and you fill out a little intake form and we talk for about an hour and a half and figure everything out. We come up with a concrete plan. Or the next 1% metabolic reset cohorts start in May. So the online cohort starts May 19th. The in-person, people live here in Maine, starts May 21st. I'll put the link to save a spot in the show notes below. Spots are limited to 10 each program because it's a high touch program and I want to be able to really sit with you all. So if you feel like this is going to be something you want, get on the list now. It's a small personal group. I think so far they're going really, these two groups that I have right now are going fabulously. Everyone's going really deep and really helping each other and it's beautiful. Okay. If you have questions about anything, do not hesitate to comment on this video or comment on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. And if you would be so kind, it would be awesome if you subscribed as well, because it really helps my channel so that I can put out more information like this. And in case no one's told you today, I love you. And I'm convinced of your capacity to continue crafting a life worth living. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you on the next episode. Take care, friends. Bye.